wrap their heads around it. So it's more of a process than it is an achievement. Hopefully you can continue doing this after Ramadan and arrive at something. There's a difference between mortality and death. I'm not asking you to contemplate your death. Your death is a moment in time. It's a moment in time. You don't know when it's going to happen. And there's no point of obsessing about that at all because you have no idea how or when it's going to happen. That's not what I'm talking about. And obsessing about that actually is not helpful at all. It's contemplating the concept of mortality, meaning the fact that at some point you're going to cease to exist, that you are not going to live forever. And this is different. This is a very different thing. So you have to differentiate between contemplating your death. Your death is I know you don't know when, you don't know exactly how, but mortality is a different thing. It's the idea that I'm not going to be here forever. This is the primary fear that we have in our lives. And it's important to understand who fears this. It's not your ruh that fears this. No. It's your nafs that fears this. It's very different. Your ruh comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every time you sleep, it goes back to God subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't fear death. It doesn't fear death at all. It doesn't care about death. Death to it doesn't mean much. Because the ruh is something that came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And going back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is something it looks forward to. It's your nafs that actually is absolutely terrified from death. There are two things that we're scared of in life. We're scared of death and we're scared of pain. These are the two things that we are scared of the most in life. There's many other phobias for sure, but these are the two main fears that we have. The ruh and the nafs both fear pain. The ruh and the nafs both fear pain, which is why you're able to wrap your head around death as a person, but you're still going to be afraid of suffering. The fear of suffering is what the human being will continue to carry. And I'm not here to talk about the fear of suffering, honestly. That's something that you're talking to. It's a very advanced topic in Tazkiyah. I'm not here to talk about it today. But I'm just saying that these are the two basic fears. Death is feared by the nafs. The reason it does that is because the nafs knows that death to it is the end. That's how the ruh doesn't end. The ruh comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it knows that it's going to move on from one thing to the other. It has that comprehension. The nafs only exists because the ruh and the body met. But at some point when the ruh and the body part ways, and the body goes back to the soil of the earth, and the ruh goes back to Allah, the nafs doesn't find its place anymore. It doesn't exist anymore. And because of that, it's scared of it. It's scared of death. It re-exists again on resurrection because the body's there again. That's why when you're resurrected, you're not resurrected as your soul, as your spirit alone. You're resurrected as your spirit and your bodies, so the soul can exist again. But in the meantime, the nafs is scared because it sees death as the end. So that's who's afraid of death. It's not your spirit, it's your nafs. Put a pin in that because that's going to be an important piece of this story. When you listen to the story of Adam alayhi salam, what caused Adam to leave the Jannah that he was in? And this whole story of Adam is metaphorical. The whole story about Adam alayhi salam is metaphorical. Yes, there are certain facts, but a lot of it is just symbolic and it's for reflection. The Jannah for Adam represented safety and security. Represented a place where he didn't have to work to make a living. A place where he didn't have to be afraid of predators. He didn't have to be afraid of oppression. It's a place where everything was made available to him. And Adam alayhi salam was absolutely happy. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted him Hawa, he was even happier. Now he had companionship as well. So now he was living in a place where he's secure, he's safe, he's provided for, and he has companionship. He has all the needs of a man. So why would why would he even consider doing anything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him not to do? Like if he had a list of 100 things he shouldn't do, why would he think of doing any of them? Forget about being just one thing that he was told not to do. The reason is because what Iblis told him. What did Iblis told him? ما نهاكما ربكما عن هذه الشجرة إلا أن تكونا ملكين أو تكونا من الخالدين. Your Lord did not deprive you from eating from this tree except for one of two reasons. Either if you eat from it, either you become one of the angels, who to Adam alayhi salam were immortal. The angels to Adam alayhi salam were immortal. They seemed like they didn't die. They didn't have an age. They weren't aging. There was no age process for the angels. They only cease to exist on Yawm al-Qiyamah. When it happens, that's it, and then they come back again. So they don't have that. أو تكون من الخالدين, or to be immortal. Adam loved the package that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described for him. He loved the package. It was very nice. He had intellect. He was able to learn. He had companionship, he had security, he had safety, he had provision, he had everything. But then there was a caveat to all of it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala added to the package. So, but at some point you're going to die. He didn't like that. He didn't like that at all. Can I not do that one? All of this, amazing. This is amazing, but can we just remove that one? He didn't like the death piece at all. And he's scared of it. And it was the fear of his death that caused him to eat from the tree. It's important to understand what caused Adam alayhi salam to actually go and make this mistake. It was his fear of death. The Quran says this, I'm not making this up. إِلَّا أَن تَكُونَا مَلَكَيْنِ أَوْ تَكُونَا مِنَ الْخَالِدِينَ وَقَاسَمَهُمَا إِنِّي لَكُمَا لَمِنَ النَّاصِرِينَ. He swore. I'm telling you, you eat from this, you're immortal. Adam alayhi salam starts thinking, well, maybe if I do it and I make a mistake, Allah forgives me, but at least I'm immortal. I don't have to deal with death because death is crippling. Because the fear of death, the fear of mortality, for a raw nafs, because Adam alayhi salam's example in the Quran is the example of a raw nafs. A nafs that is still, has not been tamed yet, has not been identified yet, has not been dealt with yet. Adam alayhi salam didn't understand yet what was going on. This was a very new experience to him. Who he was on the inside, the ruh and the nafs and the qalb and the aql and the fu'ad, all these things that come together to make you. He didn't understand exactly what was going on. He was just dealing with these urges, these emotions, these feelings, these desires, these instincts. He didn't understand. He wasn't able to break them down yet. It was the experience of the raw existence of the human being. So the fear of mortality is what drove him to make this mistake, to eat from that tree. So he ate. And then he found out that's not the case at all. Of course, the story is much more symbolic in detail, but I just want that piece because that's what you need to contemplate. So this fear of death has been something that human beings have been carrying around forever. It is the ultimate. But there's a basic difference between how Muslims see it and how the Western societies see it. And what I'm finding, because what I do, because of my profession, that we have lost a lot of what we used to have in terms of how we deal with it. Muslims used to be much more mature with how they deal with death because they would contemplate it, they were reflected, and they would come to an acceptance of their mortality. Something that I don't feel that we have anymore. We've lost a lot of this. I see people who lack belief in God altogether with a better grasp on their mortality than people who should have no problem with this at all. Than people who have no problem with this at all because it's an integral part of their deen. It's something that they are told about from the beginning and they're expected to understand, they're expected to be able to comprehend. And the reason comes from the fact that we have turned around. We have turned away from this. The Prophet ﷺ talks about this. He talks about the ummah having something called wahan, having something called weakness in it. There's a lot of Muslims and they can't get anything done. This is the long hadith where the Prophet ﷺ talks about تَدَاعَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْأُمَمْ كَمَا تَدَاعَ الْأَكَلَةُ عَلَى قَصْعَتِهَا. People will treat you like a pizza pie and they'll just take whatever they want from you. And they'll ask him, Ya Rasulullah, is it because there's not enough of us? And you say, no, there's many of you, but there's no weight to them. And then he talks about al-wahan. What happens is you become weak. And so they ask him, well, how? So he points out two things, alayhi salatu wasalam. He says, حُبُّ الدُّنْيَا وَكَرَاهِيَةُ الْمَوْتِ. Neither of these things are wrong. There's nothing wrong to love the dunya that you're living in and love your experience. There's nothing wrong to despise death. Death is a musibah. It's the end. You don't get a chance to make amends afterwards. You can't perform tawbah afterwards. It's when these two things drive your decisions. It's when your love for staying here and your fear of leaving drives all of your decisions. It's what makes you make any choice in your life. It's just wanting to stay. You just want to live. It doesn't matter how you live. It doesn't matter what the price that you pay for life is, as long as you live. وَلَتَجِدَنَّهُمْ أَحْرَصَ النَّاسِ عَلَى حَيَاةٍ وَمِنَ الَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا يَوَدُّ أَحَدُهُمْ لَوْ يُعَمَّرُ أَلْفَ سَنَةٍ وَمَا هُوَ بِمُزَحْزِحِهِ مِنَ الْعَذَابِ أَن يُعَمَّرَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the zalimeen, talks about the mushrikeen, that you will find them people who hold on to life. All they want is just to live. It doesn't matter the price. It doesn't matter the quality. It doesn't matter what they're doing. They want to live 1,000 years forever if they can. It's not going to help them though. How you understand this concept is by thinking about the opposite of it. What is the opposite of mortality? The opposite of it is immortality. The funny thing is our brains don't even understand immortality. Like we can't even grasp it or comprehend it even if we tried. All of the authors who try to write books that contain within them the story that the human being doesn't die, that the human being at some point in the future figures out a way to live immortally, live forever. All of those novel series and all of the books that are written on this topic, interestingly enough, if the author is dumb enough to continue to write, like he doesn't stop with the first book, where he just leaves it open. If he continues to write, like he wants to write a full story about how it works, he ends up the human race at the end of it ends up reintroducing death again. That the human race ends up reintroducing death to life, to their lives again, consciously, by choice. Because we are not designed as human beings to be able to live immortally. Like we don't, this story that we're put in, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put us here, does not allow for us to live forever. Like our brains are not even rigged that way. Our nufus aren't rigged that way. We need closure for everything. Everything has to begin and has to end. So the concept of immortality is something that we don't even fully understand, nor do we appreciate. And if you accept mortality, what ends up happening, if you were told you're going to live forever, then how could you possibly convince yourself to do anything? How could you convince yourself to do anything at all? Because the moment you say, okay, we have to do this, then the answer will be, well, I'll do it tomorrow. I have time, that's all I have. All I have is time, so if I don't do it today, I'll do it tomorrow. And if I don't do it tomorrow, I'll do it the day after. And if I don't do it the day after, the day after, no problem, no problem. And then it becomes absolutely impossible to get yourself to do anything because there's no end. It's just, there's no end. And people are demotivated. They're demotivated to their core. Mortality is not designed to make you depressed and to make you upset and sad. No, it is absolutely the opposite of that. Accepting mortality allows you to enjoy the beauty of the life that you're living in. Everything becomes that much more valuable, that much more precious, because the fact that it ends. The poetic aspect of it all is that it ends, is that your time on the planet is limited. That is what makes it all beautiful. The fact that it's not going to go on forever, which makes every moment a valuable moment because it's going to end, because it's not going to go on forever. If it went on forever, then it's very hard for us to be able to convince ourselves or convince the nafs to do anything, because it's just time is cheap, and time is the commodity that exists at all times. But when you take that and say, no, you have a very small piece of it, a very small piece of time, then that becomes very valuable. Anything in life that has an infinite resource for you, that's an infinite resource for you, you don't take seriously, and you will take for granted, and you don't have a choice. If it's there in abundance, it's hard to show gratitude for it. It's hard to feel its value. But when you know that it's scarce, when you know that it's not, you don't have an infinite resource of it, then it becomes more valuable. And time is that. Time is finite. You don't have a lot of it, so it becomes much more valuable. The reason that accepting mortality is so important, this is the reason, this is why you have to, because this is the ultimate weapon that you carry to deal with your nafs. Mujahadatun nafs, to strive against your nafs and your desires, and to actually tame your nafs without accepting mortality is impossible. It's impossible. You cannot do it. You can try, but you will fail because you can't. This is the one thing, this is the one piece of information that the nafs is absolutely terrified of. It is terrified beyond its ability to comprehend. It will always be like that. It will never change. You knowing that, you have the piece of information of the weakness of your opponent. The one that you're trying to tame, you understand what it fears the most. What it fears the most is death. If you are capable of accepting your mortality, if you are no longer in crippling fear of it, then now you have leverage over your nafs. You are capable, because every time you're reminded of the nearness of its death, the nearness of its mortality and of its ceasing of it to exist, then it'll immediately turn its ways because it's so scared of it. So not having this means you don't have the most powerful tool that you carry. And without this, you can't get anything done. The reason that we fear death, which is the wrong reason, is because we fear nothingness. The human being does not want to not exist anymore. It's a scary thing. It's scary for the lights to go off and for you not to be around anymore. It's a very, very scary thing. And we don't like it. And the human being forever has tried to avoid this. This is why people don't talk about death. This is why people don't like contemplating death. Because when you think about that, the idea of nothingness, as Muslims, that's not how you're supposed to see it. Now, when I talk about this in Tazkiyah sessions, we usually spend 6 weeks or so where I'm talking about contemplating death and simulating death and asking people to sit and simulate their death and imagine what it would feel like and imagine what it would be like and try to wrap their heads around it and do this, and they would fail. People would, this is the way you do it, I would just give them that and they would do it and try and fail and fail and fail and fail, getting close to it but not being able to actually grasp it, because as long as you see death as the end, you're not going to be able to grasp it. For as long as you see death as the end, it's impossible for you to accept it. If you're convinced that death is the end, then you have no hope. There's no hope that you'll ever fully accept it. Because we don't understand, we can't accept or comprehend the end. That we're going to end and that's the end, there's nothing after that. That is a reality that is much bigger than us. It's much more powerful. It's an overwhelming, overburdening thought that we don't have the ability to fully accept. Even if we're going to make amends with for a certain period of time, just to get over a diagnosis or to hold ourselves appropriately as we move forward when death is coming our way, but it's not something we can actually fully make peace with. The only way you can make peace with death is if you see it as a transition. Because it's not the end, it's a transition. You are going from one way of existing to another way of existing. And then to a third way of existing. And then to a fourth way of existing. You go from this to barzakh, to resurrection, to either Jannah or not. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us Jannah is what you're going to transition. You have to be able to see death as a transition, not as an end. If you see it as an end, if you continue to convince yourself that if you're convinced that it's the end, then you can't wrap your head around it. It's too difficult and it's overwhelming and it's impossible to do so. But once you're able to see it as a transition, that I'm just moving on from this to this, which brings into this equation the concept of resurrection, the concept of ba'th, the concept of barzakh. This has to be there. Without that piece, mortality is not something you can understand. So when I talk about accepting mortality, accepting the fact that you're going to cease to exist at one point, if you see it as nothing, what's coming next is nothingness, and it is the end, you're going to be stuck. Because this is going to be impossible to actually accept. It's just going to be depressing and you're not going to be able to do it. But if you see it as transition, then you are capable of wrapping your head around it. And you're capable of making peace with it as a concept. But that requires you understanding what's coming next. You have to have clarity on what barzakh, that transitional period is. And that's what barzakh means. It's a transition. بَيْنَهُمَا بَرْزَخٌ لَا يَبْغِيَانِ. Between them is an area of transition between the two. So barzakh is a transition. So you have to have clarity on resurrection. Which brings us to the second point within mortality that has to be understood. In order for you to be able to accept mortality, you have to have clarity on resurrection. Which is why the Quran talks about this time and time again and time again and time again and time again. You have to have clarity on the fact that you're going to come back and be held accountable. If you have clarity on that, if you have certainty with that, then death is no longer as scary as it was. It becomes scarier, but not because you're fearing nothingness and endness and emptiness. It's because you're fearing judgment. It's because you're fearing being held accountable. It's because you're fearing punishment. It's because you're thinking about, did I do enough? Did I do enough to get myself across this finishing line? What did I do? That fear is very productive. That is a productive fear if you carry that. If you are worried about whether you've done enough good deeds, of whether your judgment is going to go the right way or not, that is a productive fear. The fear of nothingness is not productive. There's nothing to do with that. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rigged us this way. We are programmed this way because fearing nothingness only depresses us. When you accept mortality, you will go through the stages of grief. You will go through all the stages of grief. You will go through denial, and you will go through depression, and you will go through anxiety, and you'll go through anger. You'll go through all of them. Before you arrive at acceptance of mortality, you will feel all of those feelings. It's a process that you have to embark on. You have to slowly go through these feelings. You have to contemplate and reflect upon your own mortality and allow yourself to feel the feelings that are going to occur at the end. All of the feelings that will come up are natural. It's natural to feel sad at the end of life. Sad that it's ending, because it's a beautiful thing, because this ultimate blessing that you have, which is being alive, is absolutely mesmerizing and it's astonishing. For it to end is sad. For you not to have more time to do good deeds and change your ways and repent and make amends and fix the problems and correct the mistakes is a sad thing. You can have some degree of fear. It should not be a crippling fear of darkness. If that's what you're fearing, that means you have not accepted your own faith. Meaning you don't have certainty or clarity on your own iman, and that's something that you have to work on. Because if you have clarity on iman, you're not fearing nothingness, you're not fearing emptiness. It's the fear of what you're going to say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yawm al-qiyamah about the choices that you made. You will fear for the people you leave behind. And if you fear for the people that you leave behind, then one way to help accept mortality is to make sure that your affairs are in order. To make sure that your wasiyah is written, make sure that you've taken care of the people, that that everything is set for them. It helps for the transition when you've done that. You can also feel anger. And that's what I'm trying to help you to avoid. Is some people at the end feel anger that they didn't live. Feel anger that they haven't. I saw that once. A man like in his late 80s. He came into the clinic on a wheelchair, with a oxygen tank connected to his face. He had two malignancies, not one. He had two malignancies, both were spread. Both spread malignancies in his body. He came in with two different sets of cancers that were both eating away at his body. The man had like every comorbidity you can imagine. Everything from coronary artery disease to hypertension to diabetes, everything. He comes in, you can hear him breathing from the end of the hall. I walk in to talk to him in the room, and what he tells me in this meeting, because he tells me, you need to fix this because I haven't lived yet. I haven't lived yet. He's 80 years old. He's breathing on 3 liters of oxygen. Everything is breaking down. And he said that, and it made me think that it doesn't matter how old you are. If you have not accepted your own mortality, time doesn't mean anything to you. Like whether you want to live for another 10, 15 years. You want to live for another 40 years. When those are up, right at the moment of death, you're going to feel like you didn't live anything. You're going to feel like everything that went before doesn't matter. You can't bring those years with you at the moment of death. You're going to feel like it's too early at any point in life, unless you live differently. Unless the way that you live is different, unless you've accepted your mortality. And so one of the ways they do this, one of the ways the scholars will do this, is that they function as if they're in extra time. Ever watched a football game? Right? So 90 minutes is how much the time is, right? So so most of them live their lives as if the 90 minutes are over, and they're in extra time. Meaning any time now the referee is going to blow the whistle and it's up. So every extra minute is awesome. Because at any point now it should end. I got an extra minute. Alhamdulillah, amazing. I shouldn't get it. They live that way. They have a feeling that every minute that they're getting, that the referee is adding on an extra minute that they didn't even think they deserved to begin with. That's how they function, because they don't look at it. They don't have tul al-amal. Tul al-amal is the problem when you feel that your nafs tells you a lie. Your nafs tells you a lie. The lie that your nafs tells you is that you're going to live for a very long time. You're fine. You have not much to worry about. There's not much to worry about. You have time. This old man, he felt he had time. He still had time. Coming to the clinic, we'll find something for him. He'll have some more time. I once sat with a 90-something-year-old guy talking about end of life stuff, and he was resisting everything. And I asked him, what are you hoping for? He told me, I'll live another year or two. So I'm all right, fine. So after those year or two, then what? He said, well, then at that point I'll hope for another year or two. And then after that, well, another year or two. Yeah, it's just, when does this end? Like you have to accept that at some point it's going to end. Yeah, but we tend to ignore that. Like the human experience is like we ignore that. We just put that in our blind spot and try not to think about that. As a Muslim, you can't. You have to take this. You have to embrace this reality. This is a reality that beautifies life. It makes life beautiful. It's actually not something to make you depressed or sad. It makes every moment precious. When you are told that you're going to die, and you only have a couple of days left in your life, every moment becomes absolutely critical. Every breath that you take, every blue sky you look at, every fresh breeze that hits your face, every cup of water that you drink becomes that much more beautiful. Every time you see a loved one, every conversation you have with a human being, all of this becomes so much more meaningful because it's the last time, because you're not going to do it again, because this is beautiful. So if you live that way, if you live with that mentality that it could end any moment, the nafs tells you a lie. One of the exercises I ask people to do is try to live a week as if it's your last week. Imagine that next week, at this time after Fajr, you die. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you a long life with salihat. Say Ameen. But imagine, if you were to live a week and then next week, today's Wednesday morning, next Wednesday morning, you're going to drop dead after Salat al-Fajr. You'll try and live a week like that. You may get through a day or two with some heightened degree of spirituality and functionality. But then it'll fall off because it's a lie. Because it's like you can't live a lie, right? So if you can't live a lie, and I agree with you, don't live that lie. But don't live the other lie. Don't live the other lie where you have time. That's a lie. The nafs doesn't know that. The nafs is lying to you. It just knows that if it continues to tell you that you have time, and it convinces you that you have time, and you have nothing to worry about, you don't have to contemplate mortality, and you don't have to do anything. There's no sense of urgency anymore. You have time, right? You can procrastinate, which is the enemy of mortality, is procrastination, where you don't get things done, where everything is messed up, but you're not working on them. You're not fixing them today. Fix them later. When later? Ya akhi, when later? Give me exactly when later. Give me a date. Look at the calendar. April 16th. Do you know you'll live that long? Do you know that you live like... You don't know. You don't know. You don't know that you're going to live that long. Why are you... If this isn't a priority, why are you pushing it down that far? Why would you even say tomorrow? Why would you say in an hour? You don't know. The lie of the nafs is that you will live for a long time. That's a lie. And if I tell you to convince yourself you're going to die in a week, that's a lie too. Don't believe lies. In Tazkiyah, you're never asked to believe a lie. What is the truth? The truth is that we hope that we live a long time. Inshallah we will. But we don't know that we will. And this can end at any moment without warning. This could end any moment without warning. And that is the truth. The truth is that it can end at any moment without warning. And since that is the truth, I have to live accordingly to it. I have to live according to that truth, where this could end at any moment without warning. Inshallah it won't. Inshallah I'll live many decades. But I don't know that for sure. And since the possibility of it ending any moment is there, I have to live according to that possibility. And when you do that, and you accept your mortality, you get over it. You get over the sadness and the depression and the denial and the anger. When you get over all of that, and you come to acceptance of your mortality, it will free you. It will absolutely liberate you as a human being. You will no longer live enslaved to anything but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam lived. He lived, he was not in fear of his death. He did not fear his mortality. He didn't want it. He didn't ask for it. He didn't work towards it happening to himself or others, not at all. But he was not afraid of it. And when it came, he was ready. When the time came, he was ready. He took it standing up. He received his death standing, focused on his goal. No problem. If this is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to take me, I'm ready to go to him subhanahu wa ta'ala anytime. There's a lot in this topic that I need to cover. I'm not going to be able to cover it within this morning. But I'll end on this note for you to think about. If I were to tell you that you're going to die in a week, right? And by the way, there's wisdom in you not knowing when you're going to die. It's better that you don't know. Some people say, no, I would like to know. No, you don't. If you know, your nafs will always beat you in every single argument. You cannot win. You cannot beat your nafs. That's it. Just like death is the kryptonite of your nafs, it will completely tame it. If you accept your mortality, you can tame your nafs like this. It's the easiest thing in the world. I see people, once they're given the diagnosis, they have 3 months, they will make decisions that they could not make during their lives. Because their nafs is so scared, it retreats back and it quiets down in fear. And then you can actually hear yourself think, and you can make decisions. But if I told you you're going to die in a week, what would you do differently? And if you make changes, then make those changes now. Because the Salihin say that even if I knew I was going to die tomorrow, I would change nothing. The Salihun would say, if I knew I was going to die tomorrow morning, and I knew for sure, I would change nothing. The way I'm living now is the way I would continue to live. Some people will say, I would spend all of my money. No, don't spend all of your money. Why would you do that? What about your inheritors? What about your heirs? No, you need to keep... Whatever you think you should be doing with your money, do with it now. If you think there's a certain amount you should be giving sadaqah, do that. If your money should be used in a better way, do that. If your time, well, I would stop going to work. Why? Why would you stop going to work? Why were you going to work to begin with? Why were you going to work? Was it not a ta'ah? Was it not a ibadah? Why wasn't it? I would stop going to school. Why? Talab al-ilm. Why would you stop going to school? Then you must have been doing it for the wrong reason all these years. If you were to change anything, that means you're doing it for the wrong reason, or it's not the right thing to do. So go back and look at that and contemplate that. You may find that, oh, I need to get my affairs in order. Because if you're able to live your life in a way where even if I knew I was going to die tomorrow, I would not change a thing. This is what I would have done. I would come for Salat al-Fajr, I would give a dars and listen to it, I would do tasbihat, I would go to work, I would come back and spend time with my family, I would pray at night. This is what I would do, the same thing. Then, and continue to do that. Continue to do that. And allow yourself to accept your own mortality. It will be the most freeing and liberating moment in the entirety of your life when you're capable of understanding it. Without understanding it, I'm sorry, almost everything I talk about here within these sessions will not be of use to you until you have wrapped your head around it. As long as you live with the lie of tul al-amal, that you're going to live for a long time, the concept of Islam will continue to be foreign and difficult to practice and will not actually do anything for you. The moment you accept your mortality and you embrace that sadness and you embrace the fact that it's going to end and you see it as a transition, it will liberate you, it will beautify life for you and will allow you to function on a much higher level. How the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam and the Sahaba did. I'll end with that. Subhanakallah bihamdik. Shadu la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka wa azzam ala nabiyyina wa habibina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Jazakumullah khair. Barakallahu feekum.